Welcome to this explainer. Right now, we are witnessing something completely unprecedented. We aren't just dealing with one massive news story or even two. We are looking at a barrage of five separate, highly volatile, breaking crises hitting the United States literally all at the same time. We're talking about naval standoffs in the Middle East, troops surging into Washington, D.C., and profound technological shifts rewriting the economy. Honestly, the sheer velocity of this news cycle can feel super overwhelming, which is exactly why we need to step back and look at the entire board.
So you might be wondering, how do all these things actually intersect? It is incredibly tempting to view a standoff with Iran, a local security alert, and the rapid rise of AI as completely separate events. But they aren't happening in a vacuum. It's like a giant puzzle. A geopolitical spark thousands of miles away can directly trigger defense posturing in our own capital, which in turn spikes oil prices, driving up inflation, and radically altering the political landscape right before an election. Today, we are going to connect these dots to show you exactly how these massive global and domestic shifts are feeding into one another to create an intensely unpredictable environment for all of us. To make sense of this, we are going to follow the ripple effect. Here's our agenda. First, U.S. and Iran tensions. Second, the security surge in D.C. Third, immigration policy shifts. Fourth, the economy and AI. And finally, number 5, the growing political divide. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, U.S. and Iran tensions, the global flashpoint. To really understand the gravity of this, we have to look closely at a major geographic choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. We are seeing a profound shift from the previous Biden-era foreign policy approach to a much more aggressive posture under the Trump administration. Guys, the literal tension in the water is palpable. You have massive American naval forces holding a strong, visible presence right at the edge of this narrow waterway, creating a high-stakes staring contest. Now, the White House has denied reaching any final formalized agreement with Tehran, while President Trump has made it exceptionally clear that America will project overwhelming force to protect its regional interests. So what does this all mean for us? Well, when military forces crowd a narrow shipping lane that handles a massive fraction of the world's oil supply, the stakes go far beyond international diplomacy. Think about the global supply chain for a second. If an incident disrupts shipping through this strait for even a few days, the domino effect is instant. We wouldn't just read about it in the international news, we would immediately feel it at the gas pump and see it reflected in the cost of groceries. Global markets are already pricing in this fear. Investors are incredibly nervous, and energy prices are beginning to show the kind of volatility that acts as a giant flashing warning light for the entire global economy. And as you'd expect, this aggressive posture isn't universally accepted. It is absolutely tearing the defense community down the middle. Republican leaders and supporters of this maximum pressure campaign argue that showing overwhelming strength is literally the only language of deterrence that works. They firmly believe projecting power stops conflict before it even starts. On the flip side, critics are sounding the alarm over the domino effect of accidental escalation. When heavily armed warships are operating practically on top of each other, all it takes is a misunderstood radar signal, a warning shot fired just a bit too close, or a single rogue drone to trigger a cascading military confrontation that could trap the U.S. in long-term regional instability. Which brings us to Section 2, the security surge in D.C. and how we're fortifying the capital. That intense anxiety thousands of miles away doesn't just stay overseas. It sends ripples right back home. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth recently announced preparations for a major National Guard surge in Washington, D.C., completely transforming the security posture of the city. The Pentagon is bracing for an incredibly volatile summer. President Trump has reportedly instructed officials to maintain troop levels, getting the military ready for potential large-scale political unrest and demonstrations. The historical context here is absolutely crucial. Summers during highly polarized election cycles often become the epicenter for nationwide protests, and federal law enforcement is clearly predicting a temperature that requires military-grade logistical support to manage. Bringing military personnel into civilian spaces always sparks a fiery debate, right? Supporters argue that given the unpredictable global threats and the recent history of domestic political violence, hardening the capital is just basic, pragmatic security. They see it as a totally necessary shield. Critics, however, are deeply, deeply alarmed by the optics and the implications. They point to real fears of government overreach, questioning whether a significant military presence inside the nation's capital creates a chilling effect on the First Amendment and normalizes using the armed forces to police domestic political expression. Moving right along, let's look at Section 3, Immigration Policy Shifts and New Restrictions. While the military works to fortify the physical capital, another massive shift is happening right at our borders, rewriting the foundational rules of domestic immigration policy.
the Trump administration has announced profound new restrictions targeting how green card applicants interact with the system. Think about the sheer logistical reality of what this actually means. Under these new rules, many immigrants seeking permanent residency, people who might already hold jobs, rent apartments, and have families deeply rooted in American communities, may now be forced to physically leave the United States. They'd have to complete their applications and wait for the entire bureaucratic processing to occur from their home countries, which fundamentally disrupts the lives and legal pathways of thousands of people. And because we are approaching major elections, this policy is acting as a massive political accelerant. Supporters enthusiastically point to this as delivering on promises of aggressive law enforcement, arguing it restores order and integrity to border security by closing administrative loopholes. Critics, on the other hand, are viewing this as an unnecessary bureaucratic weapon. They argue that forcing applicants to leave the country creates devastating legal nightmares, separates working families, and functionally punishes people who are just trying to navigate the legal immigration system the right way. Make no mistake, both sides are actively weaponizing this issue to drive their voters to the polls. Now for Section 4, let's talk about the economy and AI and the direct impact on your wallet. These border battles and security debates are happening against the backdrop of the single issue Americans care about most, the intense, persistent pressure on our wallets. We are seeing a profound psychological shift in how everyday citizens view their financial future. The phrase fever pitch barely covers it. When a family is already agonizing over sticky inflation, the rising cost of housing, and shrinking savings accounts, any additional shock is just devastating. Combine those daily, grinding struggles with the looming threat of a Middle East conflict driving up the cost of oil, which, makes transporting food and goods even more expensive, and you create an electorate that is deeply exhausted, frustrated, and looking for someone to blame. At the exact same time, we're living through a massive paradox. While economic confidence drops for the average worker, Wall Street is experiencing an unprecedented boom fueled entirely by artificial intelligence. Billions of dollars are being poured into AI infrastructure, massive data centers, and automation technologies. Optimists and venture capitalists are cheering what they see as the next great industrial revolution. But for Main Street, this rapid, almost unchecked expansion is terrifying. There is a deep existential dread that this technology isn't just going to change jobs, but completely eliminate them, widening the chasm of economic inequality before our labor laws even have a chance to adapt. It is incredibly rare to see genuine bipartisan panic in Washington, but the speed of AI has achieved exactly that. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are suddenly rushing to hold emergency hearings. Their focus isn't just on the economy, it's on survival. They are terrified about how AI deepfakes and algorithmic manipulation could supercharge election misinformation right before voters head to the polls. They are also grappling with entirely new national security vulnerabilities, furiously debating how heavily to regulate a technology that is evolving faster than the government's ability to even understand it. All of this perfectly sets up our final section, number 5, the growing political divide heading into the 2026 elections. All of these disparate threads, the military standoffs, the troops in D.C., the sweeping immigration changes, and the economic anxiety of AI lead to one inevitable collision point. Inside the political machine, the temperature is reaching an absolute boiling point ahead of the 2026 elections. In the Republican primaries, we are witnessing intense, highly competitive battles where candidates backed by Donald Trump are systematically gaining momentum and defining the party's platform. Meanwhile, Democratic strategists are working overtime to counter that momentum. They are actively organizing massive opposition campaigns that bypass the culture wars to focus heavily on what they see as vulnerabilities, demanding government accountability, leaning into the economic anxieties of the middle class, and vigorously defending healthcare and abortion rights. But here is the dynamic that makes all of this exponentially more difficult to navigate. Trust. Trust, the invisible glue of society, is evaporating. Public faith in media, corporations, and government institutions is actively plummeting. The Supreme Court finds itself squarely in the crosshairs of this distrust, constantly at the center of hyper-partisan national debates. With recent, explosive decisions on abortion pill access and ongoing existential debates over how much legal authority federal agencies actually have, the court is making rulings that will shape the American political reality for a generation, even as a large portion of the public questions the institution's fundamental legitimacy. When we pull back and look at the entire picture, the whole shebang, we can see exactly why the news feels so incredibly chaotic right now. The United States is not just dealing with one crisis, it is navigating a perfect storm. We have unpredictable, highly dangerous global tensions that threaten the energy supply. We have deeply debated, highly visible military security measures in our own capital. We have millions of workers anxious about being automated out of the middle class. And all of this is being filtered through the lens of a deeply divided, historically polarized political system. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely critical in deciding the trajectory of these interconnected events. The policies debated today will rewrite the rules for the economy, international diplomacy, and domestic life for decades. Which leaves us with one incredibly vital question to ask. With so many volatile elements in play at the exact same time, will these global and domestic tensions finally find a way to calm down, or are we accelerating into a vastly more dangerous and unpredictable era? Keep digging into the context and keep questioning what comes next.